Welcome to another episode of Out Loud and Laughing. Get ready. It's Bryan and Jon, two gay cousins having big talks and even bigger laughs. Join us. Let's see what they're up to. It's Out Loud and Laughing. Another episode of Out Loud and
Laughing.
How are you?
We should intro these with just really weird laughs all the time. Exactly. How are you today, Jon?
Well, we've been better, but we're going through it. We've got the feels, and God, life just no matter how old you get, no matter how much experience you have, for some reason, the feelings of connection and romance and those things just come on strong. I'm kind of just going through it at the moment. So,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
do you mind maybe I can use some of this time and space to tell you what's going on?
I would absolutely love to listen, but only if I'm allowed to probe.
No,
and
you must probe, and I want to have this conversation because I was thinking about what I wanted to tell you, and it's basically
Yeah.
this isn't about a person. This isn't about a specific person. This is a cultural phenomenon that's happening in front of us with modern dating, with technology at the forefront, with this idea of what's next and what's always swipeable and what's there. So what I'm sort of experiencing right now in real time, this is happening today,
Okay.
is I'm talking to a human being who I have had feelings for, and we've been sort of hanging out talking for 6 weeks now or so, on 5.5
Okay.
weeks. We've had a really great time, super great guy, right? I have not even a bad word to say about him. Not even still, to be completely honest. And this whole conversation, again, I want to emphasize and reiterate, this isn't about a person. This is about two people connecting sort of at a point in life when they're both older and things are just not aligned. There's misaligned. And
Can you quickly set the scene? So you met this person 6 weeks ago.
met him on
You met on an app. Okay. So you met him on an app. How long did you talk to this person on an app before you actually met them in person?
That's a great question. It was probably trying to think about it. I think it was a week but it was peppered conversation until it went off the app onto a phone, text thing.
Right.
And then once it went phone to text, then we set up a plan to meet up.
Well, the reason why I asked, and I think this could be something I would love to kind of deep dive into with you a little bit is, so everyone's dating on apps now, right? I think that's the way of dating. You hear fewer and fewer people meeting in person. And so I wonder if when you meet someone on an app, is it better to jump right to the first date in person to kind of do the things live? Or should you take more time to ask the right questions via message to get what you need before you do the first date? Because really, I can kind of see both sides of the coin here on which one would be more effective. I know for me back in the day, I was just a serial first dater. I didn't want to waste time messaging. I wanted to meet the person and get that physical part first. But I don't know if that's the right way, right?
Another thing, I'm going to be super existential in this episode. I'll try to be funny, but
You're always funny, Jon.
no, it's funny. No, I really do think that there's no there's no fast, quick, or square, prescription or order of how things happen and what needs to be. And I'm also learning that in real time now, where the sort of expectation and this idea that we put around what it's supposed to feel like and be and look like really is setting yourself for a big letdown, right? We're talking about new human beings who have been on their own journey, on their own path of career, relocation, adversities, whatever those may be in somebody's life, be it health, be it, natural disasters, whatever happens in everybody's lives. There's just a lot at play here. And while I think let's pause there 'cause I do want to get to the part about why I'm frustrated, but I want to
Yeah.
pause here for a moment because I think it's a lot to digest.
No, I think you're right. I think to your point, you can have a strategy, I guess, like a set strategy, because you're the same human, but every human you interact with is a different human. So your interaction with that human has to be different. So I think that's a fair point. So yeah, I guess the answer to my question is there is no answer, which I kind of assumed.
Yeah,
Which is bad. And
we're-
that's why I have so much that's why I have so much empathy for you, because it's not easy. Right. And I think that's what, like, dating is fun, but dating is also really hard and shitty and has probably a lot more downs and ups. And it's actually like almost like a part-time job in itself. Like it's a lot of work. So yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah, and that's the part where dating at 40 really becomes about like leading with compassion and empathy for people. Like, I feel really, really badly that he is in the predicament that he is as well. Like, I don't, again, like, I will continue to, as a red thread, state throughout this that there is not one party in this conversation or in this situation who's at any fault, nor assumes any blame or shame or any of the sort. It's sort of like
Mhm.
how this situation is playing out. Right. And there's a couple options here. And I think that's what's frustrating is the options are, do you wait around and do you sort of like, take the breadcrumbs that the person's sort of giving you, not necessarily out of malintent, but more so because they're fucking busy. Like
Yeah.
we're meetings from day to days and like he's traveling. He travels the world for work. Like he's just busy. And I'm okay with busy. But these kinds of relationships and these kinds of meetings and these kinds of interactions take really, really, well, it takes two people who are well versed and have the language to discuss emotional connection, attachment, and feelings, right? Like, whereas sometimes I will say things to him such as like, uh, hey, we'll call him X, person X. Hey, person X, this is making me feel a certain way, and I'm not necessarily projecting that onto you because, like, I don't think that you've done anything wrong. I'm just really curious about why it's making me feel this way, and like maybe we could talk about it. This
Yeah.
person has at every single stop along the way of this 5.5 we think has like stopped and like allowed space for both of us. We've both allowed that, right? Like
All right.
place to open up and be vulnerable and discuss with each other how we're both feeling at this moment, as well as things that are impacting our lives outside of each other, right? Like work and otherwise. So it's frustrating because it's like, oh, so good. And then it's like, it's just,
I mean, based on what you're telling me though, this sounds like it was working. So where's the turning point and how much can you share? Because I would love to, like, I don't know, listen and help if I can.
yeah. There's a couple other things because everybody's sort of identity is hidden. I think I can share a little bit more. There are so many different designs of relationships.
Yeah.
And I think which you and I touched on it in our last episode about you being a dad and a husband, and sort of the and sort of the design in your family, closed, monogamous,
Mhm.
family, and there are just so many out there, from ethical non-monogamy to polyamory to polygamy, even um, arrangements that have literally been going on since the dawn of time, but just not very comfortable for a lot of people, just because of how
Yeah.
uh, how the conversation of sex has sort of been designed and how we've like just adopted it in culture. So he has a little bit more of a fluid curiosity around like what that means in his life and sort of how sex shows up. Um,
Okay.
it doesn't, this is a whole podcast, so we're not getting into that right now. But it does challenge the dynamic, right? It does challenge my beliefs deeply, deeply challenges my beliefs. But where I'm at right now is like the connections. And to be fair as well, he has shared with me that that he doesn't know, in all of the confusion and in all of the uncertainty, one of the things that he's unsure or uncertain about is basically like what kind of relationship he wants to have next.
Yeah.
And so, there has been talk of as well. Like this isn't sort of like a John is giving up everything for person X to just idly buy and wait for John to show up with with thing that he wants to apply. But that's not what this is, right?
Yeah.
Um, and again, we're in our 40s. We've done this for a long time. We've dated, we've been in relationships. We know what we want. We know what works.
Can I just correct you, John? We are not in our 40s. We are only 40. I think that's a huge distinction for not the listeners, but for you and I.
I'm gonna take that today. Like that is going to be my glimmer of hope for how all of this pans out at the end. Is I'm old,
We are just starting out in our 40s. We should be
maybe 40.
exactly. We're junior 40s.
Yeah, I'm junior 40. Exactly.
No, but I think you bring up interesting points in that. I mean, we've always known. I mean, everyone's always known. It's all about like the right time, right place. But I think now that you're dating in your 40s, like when you're dating in your 20s, you're having fun, your guard's down, you don't necessarily know who you are so much. But now that we're 40, not in our 40s, um, there's that element of like you also know who you are and what you like and what you don't like. And so if you do find someone attractive and you connect with them, if there are some things at that foundation that aren't necessarily at their core, like they're at your core, that is a struggle. And I think that you're recognizing that 6 weeks in versus 6 years in, which a lot of people have probably made that mistake. And so like kudos to you for recognizing that.
If I'm being honest, though, I realized that like 6 minutes in, as a matter of fact, it was the
Yeah.
reason why I didn't initially reach out because on the profile, it did list multiple styles of relationships. It did list monogamy,
Mm,
also listed ethical non-monogamy, and sort of in my search, I'm glad I didn't filter it out because I would have met this person, but then I kind of wish I would have filtered it out because I wouldn't be in the predicament, if we're being completely honest. But life is a risk. But I did from the very beginning. I was advocating for myself. I was like, this is not something I'm comfortable with. This is not something that I'd like put myself out there to do. We have had conversations around like, you know, it's my choice to have stuck around to continue to have this conversation as much as it has been his decision to continue having these conversations. And when you have two people like showing up like that for one another, like it's really difficult to sunset that connection.
yeah.
So we're just really, again, leading with kindness and respect and space and, trying to make understanding and understand each other's design. Like what it looks like and what it feels like to another person is very different than how you will ever show up to somebody else.
I mean, I think what's hard is being in a loving relationship is difficult as we're talking about, but honestly, any relationship, right? I think,
I mean, yours and my relationship was the hardest. I can't stand you sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, we've had moments, which I'm sure we'll talk about for sure. But,
Yeah.
but to my point in this is that, and I want to spend a little more time with this person X and talking a little bit through that, but also like your community around you, right? And how have your other relationships shown up for you in this hard time or not shown up? Like you and I talk all the time, right? I think our listeners know that we have a podcast together. So
Yeah.
if we didn't talk all the time, that would be inauthentic. So I know you and I have been texting a little bit. And I know you actually didn't tell me anything. We actually waited for this pod. So this is all new to me, but I think it would be interesting to understand, like, has your community been supportive of you? And you can share as much or a little detail as you want, but obviously you're going through a little bit of a tough time. And how has that looked?
It's really interesting. So I'm gonna like sort of go into the middle and the end. Okay, so I'm reading a book.
Oh,
I'm reading a really great book. I think everybody should get their hands on it just because of how I think it presents a conversation. Actually, a book that person X recommended to me, and it's called Ethical Slut. And it's a really great book because it outlines and sort of takes the conversation of sex back to the beginning, right? If you've ever sort of thought about like, why do I believe what I believe? These things are not sort of like, these things are bestowed upon us. They're not innate. If anything, being innate, I think the design is for like humans to sort of just sexually interact. That's sort of our nature. That's why we had to put rules around it, right?
yeah.
Um, and again, none of this is condoning or advocating or nor adding judgment. Like, listen, we are literally all here to share the entire experience. I feel that it will resonate with somebody Like somebody will learn something, take something, accept something, or otherwise. So, by reading this book, I have started to sort of understand a little bit more about like myself. There's so much on this, right? There's like attachment levels. Like I'm an ancient attacher. I know those things. And so, you know, I'm sorry, I did go off topic here, but I do need you to sort of bring me back. I feel like I'm in the therapist's office. You ever do that? Like you just go on a tangent and you're like, where's that? Where was I going? That just happened to
No,
me.
so you're spot on. Like you're spot on. Like I think when the whole like quote unquote term sex has become so taboo, and that's just based on what society has told us on how we need to think about sex, which is why people need to do what's comfortable for them and in their relationship and all of that. So I think that's fair. I guess my question was a little bit of a tangent though. So I took you off topic around your support system and you've had a couple of days and how has that looked?
Yeah, let me tie it back all together. Thank you. Perfect. Right. So, like,
Yeah.
the reason why I started in the middle and told you about this book, Ethical Slut, is because it's kind of difficult, right? All of my friends, for example, are heteronormative married couples, right? Or at the very least, are designed to look like the heteronormative couple. Very difficult, like, come to somebody, a friend, a family member, to say, hey, I'm considering like looking at this as an option for my life. I am learning about sex 40 years old in a different way than I ever even looked at it. And I'm having conversations that I never even had, nor thought I would have. Now,
Yeah.
for everybody here, for myself, for you, these are not decisions that are happening in real time. This is I'm reading, I'm going to therapy. I still believe in monogamy. I still believe in the beauty and the honor that it takes and the loyalty that it takes to foster that relationship. I think at the end of the day, as it pertains to this, and we'll sort of put a bow on this part, is like you said, it's whatever's comfortable for you. It's whatever you want, and everybody should respect each other. But my community is like, I've gone to them and I've shared what I've been able to share, but like there's almost this weird um, veil, if you will, that I'm sort of, I feel shame about sharing it with some. I feel like I wonder what people would think of me. This book like does address it. There are areas and places that you shouldn't be discussing this. They're used to places like the workplace that had they found out, like they could have taken in the book itself, it was just talking about instances where in like sort of like multi-adult relationships, poly sort of situations where there were kids involved. Sometimes it got, like really confusing and like the court systems came in and stuff because they just don't allow those relationships or view that legally, right? So it's like you have to be careful. So in terms of the support system, it's like who do you go to, right? And so person X and I have really like he's been very helpful in sort of guiding me on this understanding without any judgment. And to be honest, I did come in with a little bit of judgment, right? Based off of some of my conditioning, like it's expected. I really tried hardly not to project that on this person. Maybe it did come out because how can you hide everything you believe? But but this is also making it really complicated, right? That in and of itself shouldn't be an issue. But then like not being able to talk about it like as openly and fully as I'd like to with my community, like kind of puts me in some I keep using this word in this experience called purgatory. Like
Yeah.
emotional
Waiting room.
waiting room. Which maybe is a lesson also. Like I'm taking it all.
Well, so I think you bring up a really interesting like macro issue. And I mean, we talked about a little bit with my marriage was like, I believe in monogamy. I believe in that. So that's what's been right for me. And I think what's interesting about like the LGBTQ community is that we get the stigma that we have open relationships, we sleep around, all of that stuff. And I think now that we're talking about this, it's uncovering like a aha moment for me. And it's like, we're known for it because we're so open to talk about it, right? Where in the hetero world, they don't talk about it and they do it behind each other's backs. So in this instance, in our community, at least you guys are having a conversation about it versus not having a conversation about it. It becomes an issue down the road, which happens a lot in hetero relationships. And so this is why the stigma falls on us because we talk about it. And I feel like our community is slightly more open on these types of topics. And so it ends up becoming a badge of honor, but just something that gets attached to our community. But at the end of the day, we're just talking about it because we're not as scared as, a hetero couple. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, I think the word taboo really presents itself as the perfect word here simply because, like, there are institutional places where heterosexual couples can go. There are online communities, forums, all the places
Yes.
contemplating orgies and voyeurisms and what's the most looking for? Orgies.
Swinging is another one.
Exactly, swingers. Like, we're consenting adults, like, just want to go have pleasure, and like, who are we to shame pleasure? If that's uncomfortable for us, we don't have to partake, but we also don't have to impart judgment. That's like double. That's like this is the problem, Brian. The problem is that we are so uh, makes us feel better about the choices that we make, regardless of what it is you're judging: sex, race, gender,
Yep.
age. I mean, like sometimes, like even I do it, like sort of unbiasedly or sort of unknowingly, rather, where I'm just like, walking around an old person. I do sort of think about like God, it's gonna suck when I get old, but I'm also like, gotta go. Like I'm gonna speed around this person, and there's just a feeling of like there's an age bias. So I'm talking about all of it, not just sex, but you know, whereas like the gay community has like openly accepted the fact that like I think talk about coming out of the closet, the door never fucking closes. People talk about your sex life, they talk about you know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, why wouldn't we talk about like sort of the others or arrangements of relationships and such? So
Yeah.
interesting. And I do want to like just say one last thing, which I thought was the most, I kind of laughed when I read it in the book. It said, there's jealousy both, and because I think jealousy is a big, big issue here.
Yep. Definitely. It's human nature.
Human nature, it's an emotion.
Yep.
It said, there are jealousy in both monogamous and open, non-monogamous relationships, like there is jealousy present in siblings and in our friends.
Mhm.
It's a conversation about sex and what it means to us and whether we use it as a tool of connection or whether we use it as a tool of pleasure, and it doesn't sort of hold that commodity about itself. Like basically we're like, I'm gonna give you sex in exchange of you being mine forever, right? Like that's like,
Mhm.
oh, but that is like rooted in our system so much so that it allows legal ramifications where you can like share things, build things together, have children. It's an important conversation, but look how deeply it has affected even the institution itself.
Yeah. So then where do you go from here?
So, you know, um, I've been really toying with this. I'm not making any decisions, so you guys are gonna have to wait and come back and see what happens. Honest, because I have therapy tomorrow morning with Dr. D. Not gonna everybody that's practicing you. But that's really funny. I do need some Dr. D therapy, if you know what I mean. But uh, uh, no, I want to sort of get some more opinions. I really trust the work that we do together. And I don't know if I told you this, and we can talk about this again in another episode. But EMDR is a modality of therapy, which is the item.
Yeah.
I go in there sometimes when things like this are bothering me, and I'm like, Dina, I really need to like just EMDR with my belief on sex. Not to go in there and change it, to go in there and give it space to really like, this is the only thing I'm thinking about. And we work and we talk and she asks me probing questions. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I believed that about that. So I'm gonna go do that tomorrow. I think that's
Okay. Okay.
what for me. And then also, Brian, I'm gonna do something I've not done in a long time. I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna leave it because I really like this guy. And I don't wanna like put too much on it right now, right? It's new. We have a connection. I think sometimes if you like see a leaf poke through the dirt and you just keep like poking at it, it's just gonna die. And
Yeah.
sometimes wine and the elements come through and we'll see what happens. So I guess everyone stay tuned. That's what's next.
As long as you stay true to yourself and don't change too much of what you want to be with someone, then I think it's fine. And it sounds like you understand that. You're taking the space, you're having the conversations, and you'll figure it out. And I honestly think there's so many people in this boat right now who find someone that they like. There's a couple of things that some might be bigger than they are, like political differences, like sexual things. And I think it's important to just, to your point, keep an open mind, understand where you're at, where this other person's at. And if you two can meet in the middle where you guys can actually find happiness, because if you can't, then it's not worth it. But, it sounds like you guys are both being mature about it. And so that's good to hear.
It's important for everybody, you and Adam, for myself, for all of us to whatever that feeling hits, right? Somebody does something, like just like pisses you off. Like we really have to stop for a second, give ourselves a minute,
Yeah.
collect, and ask questions and stay curious and know that sometimes it's okay that everything's not okay. Like that doesn't necessarily mean that this is the end. That doesn't necessarily mean that I don't like you. That means that we have something here that we can discuss and learn about each other, but like that really affects a lot of the times that's like sort of like what happens, and that's what that's the onus I'm operating from right now. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
reactionary. I'm going to let things sort of like
Biggest lesson then of all of this, don't sit in purgatory. Find those one or two people you can talk to, because there's someone out there that can listen to you and you shouldn't have to feel like alone. And I agree with you. Sometimes people on the hetero side don't understand our community and what we go through. And I don't know, it's important to find that those few people that'll listen and understand it.
and in the
Talk to
famous
me, John.
word and in the famous words of our grandmother, you should have played Monopoly Go instead. Should not be both needs to be swiping. Should have just played Monopoly Go.
Did she say that?
No.
I was like, how do you say that in Spanish?
I don't know. Juegue Monopoly Go.
Yeah. Fun fact, guys. When we were growing up, John and I, when we were quote unquote learning Spanish, we would just turn English into Spanish words, and that's how we got things from our grandparents, like "Yo quiero ice cream,"
About to
and and it kind of worked. So, listen, if you're trying to go to speak Spanish, just put a little twang on your English words. It's called Spanglish.
and if you're speaking English and you can't think of the word, say, gosh, I can't think of the word in English. I go, it's Spanish, and then that's it. Hey, Brian, thank you for listening. This one actually gave me a little bit of therapy. It's a virtual hug that
Oh, good. Anyone has any comments or questions, please feel free to add to the chat below. And thanks, guys, for listening to another episode of Out Loud and Laughing.